Welcome to DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. This is the first of two videos where I'm going to run through the Adventurers League modules for Ravenloft called Ravenloft Mist Hunters. I've talked about them sparingly in a couple of videos in the past, but I thought I'd do some dedicated videos on them. The purpose of the video isn't so much to review them, is to let you know what's included so you can consider grabbing elements for your campaigns or if you're doing one-shots. So if you were thinking of running Kartakass or Har'Akir, for example, there might be stuff in here that you didn't realise. Because the thing is Van Richten's guide has obviously got some information. Mistypedia is really helpful, but it doesn't really cover much other 5th edition stuff. So stuff like what's in Ravenloft Mist Hunters can be missed. I decided to do it as a two-parter because there's 14 modules in total. I thought that'd be too long for one video, so I'm doing 7 in this one, 7 in the next. This one includes the domains of Dementlieu, Kartakass, Falkovnia, Har'Akir, and Barovia. So if you're running Curse of Strahd, you might be interested in the 2 Barovia ones there near at the end. I'll probably spend a little bit longer on them as well, so you can get a full flavour of what's involved. If you're interested, there's a great overview and review on Reddit by Reddit user MJDunn01, whose name and picture I recognise because I've seen them comment and post on there a lot in the past, and they've helped me with stuff in the past, so big thank you, big love to them. And Hour of the Raven has also done a video as well. I'll include links to both of those in the description. It's quite pricey. It's $100 for the bundle. And these days, individually, they cost $10 or $15 for the extended ones. I think they used to be less than that, so they put the prices up at some point recently. I actually bought them a while back, a few years ago. I treated myself one Christmas. And I've used bits of it for Dementlieu and for Valachan. You can see my respective videos to find out how I use them. But full confession, I've not run this properly, in order. All I've done is borrow parts from it. And I don't know much about Adventurers League either, to be honest with you, other than it being a thing that exists. As part of my research for this video, I found a PDF on the Wizards of the Coast site for a Ravenloft Mist Hunters character creation guide, which includes creating PCs with help from Tarokka cards, so that looked pretty cool. I include a link for that in the description as well. I've done something similar and posted it on DM's Guild's Tarokka Fated Adventurers, where you can use Tarokka cards to decide what kind of PC you play and what class they'll be and things like that. Need maps? Trident Games has made maps for all the modules, purchasable by DM's Guild. I remember using their Valachan sets, if memory serves. And I also found maps for, sorry if I mispronounced your name here, Pier Francesco Luschetti. I really hope I got that right. And I'll include links in the description to their DM's Guild author profiles, or if they've got like a map bundle. I'll figure out the best way to do it when I'm editing this video, but basically I'll include links for those in the video as well. So the first one I'm going to cover is RMH EP1, the Grand Masquerade. Now, what's important here is if you look at like the bundle list on DM's Guild, this isn't the top of the list, but it's supposed to be the first adventure that's played. It's kind of considered a, almost like Adventure 0.5, if you will. It's set in Dementlieu and kicks things off. They meet Alanik, who's detailed in Van Richten's guide and from Alderlore, and Cabe, who is a scout who works for Alanik, who I think is brand new to Mist Hunters and exclusive to Mist Hunters. I actually included Cabe in my good NPCs in Ravenloft video if you're interested in learning more about them and other NPCs. There's info for a tea shop and its owner, who's called Richten, who's skilled with Tarokka, so presumably Vistani, though it doesn't say that. And the whole sort of adventure starts because Alanik is looking for an Order of the Guardians member called Radaga, who has gone missing. This is not to be confused with a Radaga who I believe appears in pre-5th edition, or I found an article for a Radaga on Mistypedia, but it's not this Radaga. And they're rumoured to be going to tonight's Grand Masquerade in Dementlieu. PCs have the opportunity to describe what they wear, how they spruce up their appearance. There's a Dementlieu etiquette handout, which is pretty handy. I wish I saw this for when I ran Dementlieu. And it says that how any faux pas that happen can hinder the investigation, or even reveal a PC to be an imposter, and that can be a bad thing if you know what the Dark Lord is like. 5 are included, things like when the city bell tolls, guests say, "May the Duchess favour us all." I like that flavour, that's really good. Things like don't touch your nose while talking to someone, don't reach over plate of canapes, don't reach to the other side and put your hand over all the other food, stuff like that. But then there's space for, potentially to add some more. They can gain entry with a forged invite, and there's mechanics for if it passes with flying colours, if they need to improve their look, or if they fail entirely and they're not let in, and then there's options for if they can bully or bribe the guards to let them in. They must mingle with people, getting clues about Radaga. There's lots of NPC info here, lots and lots and lots. Could be handy for you if you're running the Grand Masquerade. Examples include an actor from the Red Widow Theatre, a captain, a landlord, and various nobles. And there's awards. There's an NPC who really wants to dance with people, and if you dance with them, whoever gets the highest dexterity check can win an award for best dancer. And there's also best manners award for whoever commits the fewest faux pas. And as mentioned, I mentioned this in my Dementlieu video, there is a handout which shows some of the food that can be served, and they're kind of gross, disgusting food. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that might be a good thing to use as well. They follow up on the clues from the Grand Masquerade and go to different places such as the Mother of Tears Cathedral and Red Widow Theatre, both of which appear in Van Richten's guide, and 2 new ones, the Library of a Museum and a Tea Room. The library has a Mimic and 2 swarms of animated books. Those were originally in Candlekeep Mysteries, but includes the stat block in this. And Red Widow Theatre has a potential phase spider battle. Eventually it leads them to her apartment building, but they don't know which apartment. I think they narrow it down to 3. So they need to try and figure out which one it is, or speak to NPCs to figure it out. It also says they might have access to a City Watch uniform as a disguise, which can help with the process, or hinder them if they see other City Watch members and the City Watch members know that they're not really City Watch members. And they find out when they find her apartment that she was looking for amber sarcophagi. And in her apartment is a crawling claw familiar that can fly, apparently. That's weird, but cool. And it can cast spells as well, and they can adopt it, basically. They can have this pet crawling claw familiar. That's the first one done. A quick note, and this affects all the other adventures going on, I believe. I'm not sure if it affects the final adventure, which is another extended one. But there is a table at the back of most of the PDFs where it's called the Misty Visions mechanic, and it basically says, this adventure begins with the characters traversing the horrors of the misty borders of various domains of dread. When instructed, roll on table. Time permits, roll once for each character. Otherwise, roll once for the entire group. These effects end when the characters leave the domain, and it's things like they spend the whole time with a disadvantage on initiative, or vulnerable to slashing damage, or disadvantage on death saving throws, and things like that. I think that's a really cool mechanic, and I wish I had known about this or used this for when my players in my home game travel to different domains of dread. It feels a bit too late to include it now, because I think we're kind of getting near the end of our campaign. We're going to travel the mist a couple more times anyway. But if you're running a Ravenloft domain hopping campaign, that could be a great thing to include, and it's a slight detriment whenever they go somewhere new. RMH1, the final curtain. This one is set in Kartakass, although I think the pronunciation might be Kartakass. I learned from the Black Dice Society recently. That was the official Ravenloft actual play back in the day. I'm going to do a video about it soon. Fun fact, I believe this adventure was tentatively originally called The Performance of a Lifetime, because in the next module, it refers back to this one, and it refers to it as Performance of a Lifetime, not the final curtain. So I think that's the original name it was going to be, and then they forgot to update that when they actually changed the name. It starts in Dementlieu, in a Dementlieu cafe, and it's good flavour for Dementlieu. And it's basically, the adventure it's a murder mystery where an actor murders other actors. There's additional flavour for the domain and the Amherst settlement. Kartakass is rural, settlements are small and spread out, and Amherst, it does repeat some of the info that's already covered in Van Richten's guide, but also talks about its terrain, its dimensions, sounds, the weather, and so on. They learn that Radiga was, in quotes, born nearby, so she's a Kartakan. The town, is a living play. So the idea is that one of the PCs can take over the part of the first murder victim, and there's other parts available as well, such as love interest, mentor, etc. Each character has a critical review score, and they get more points if they embrace a role, display musical talent, and they lose points if they refuse a role, or if they're violent or rude to people, things like that. And that becomes important later, and it ties into the final boss fight. They can also ask Ivan, who's the Meister singer, and also the actor-director of this living play. They can ask him questions about Radiga and other stuff. And he says he can help them find Radiga, but only if they help him solve this murder business that's going on. Quick bit of flavour I thought was cool. The music can change depending on the mood. So if the PCs are chipper, the music is chipper. If the PCs are in a dark mood, the music is dark. And if you use music in your games, then you could change it depending on how they're being. I think that could be quite interesting, quite funny. Chapter 2 has a timeline, so stuff that happened before the PCs arrived, what happens when they arrive, and potential additional murders or murder attempts that can happen. There's a cool inn name, the Grinning Fox Inn, and there's great flavour for a poisonous flower. It's called Fox Trumpet. It only grows and is potent in Kartakass. All parts of it are poisonous, and there's mechanics for if it's ingested. It chokes the person, and if they fail 2 con saves, they die, essentially. And there's cool flavour for a Kartakan wine. It's called Bloody Mikulbrow? Mikulbrow, maybe? It says Kartakan wine purported to improve one's singing voice. The vintage is known to temporarily stain a drinker's teeth red, providing cover for many a lycanthrope's bloody teeth. So Kartakan, I think I mentioned this, Kartakan is like the sort of lycanthrope Domain of Dread, as well as the Domain of Dread of bards and actors and stuff, and performance. And the Dark Lord is a lycanthrope. And there's also a song that people think is magical, but that isn't, that supposedly slows aging. And there's a handout later on that contains the lyrics for it. And the critical review score can determine how tough the boss will be, so whether it has legendary actions and how many it has, and things that can happen in the background, like a sandbag falls on a PC's head. And the more points they have, the less bad stuff can happen, and the weaker the boss is, or the other way around. Regardless of if the murderer is defeated or not, Ivan tells them of a hideout that Radaga had, and Cabe appears to say she's been sighted in Falkovnia. There's also a magic item at one point that you can recover called a Ghost Light, and it's essentially, with a lot of these, there's like magic items which are like magic items from the Dungeon Master's Guide, but they've been reflavoured to be a bit more Ravenlofty. And this one is essentially a Lantern of Revealing, which requires 3 drops of blood as well as oil to fuel. And whoever uses it is haunted by a minor poltergeist who does annoying stuff. That's their words, not mine. I'm not the one who's saying it's annoying. It even says in the document it just does annoying stuff to annoy the PCs. RMH2, back to the front. This one is in Falkovnia, and I did use parts of this for inspiration when I ran Falkovnia in my game, and was one of my first ever Ravenloft videos as well. It says that folk hero and soldier background PCs have benefits and drawbacks. I think this does this with everything. So with every module, there's a, if the PCs have this background or that background, it can help or hinder them. And it sort of ties into what the domain is about. So that's quite cool. It's new Falkovnia NPC named Lieutenant Kushenia Vant. What I really like is in Mist Hunters, I don't think they do this in Van Richten's guide, there's little pronunciation guides for how to pronounce the NPC's name, which, very valuable, because Lord knows I pronounce like 99% of stuff wrong. She is a half-elf soldier with 1 arm, with specially fitted blade prosthetic, that's cool, and she's the night stat block. Again, it gives cool domain details, light, weather, sounds, smells, not just for Falkovnia as a whole, but Lakar, Mofenzi, the road in between, and Vjorn's lab later on. They get conscripted, and they get sent to Mofenzi, and can be given some weapons and armor. And there's info throughout if they decide not to go along with being conscripts. So if they try and escape, or they're like, no, we're not doing this, or hide, or something like that. So it's good that, it's not like players have to be railroaded in becoming conscripts if they go off script, or do the unexpected thing. There's guidance on how to change the adventure accordingly. So Lieutenant Kushenia knows of Radaga, the NPC they've been looking for, and mentions Vjorn Horseman, who she doesn't like. Who the lieutenant doesn't like, not Radaga. They travel to Mofenzi, and there's 4 possible encounters on the way there, and it gives guidance on how to combine them, which is really cool. One is a big zombie attack, as in lots of zombies, not one big zombie. Talon zombie attack, which is zombies with armor and longswords, the same as regular zombies, but have higher CR, higher AC, can do more damage, etc. Some deserters, which is a spy and some thug stat blocks, and a child chased by some swarms of zombie limbs. You can avoid the combat by hiding, or you can find a few magic items and loot from some of the zombies or the deserters, things like that. But I really like to think about combining and mixing, matching them. So say the deserters have the child, or you're fighting the Talon zombies, and that draws the attention of the regular zombies, stuff like that. Get to Mofenzi and include some flavor text. Vjorn's guards, who are the veteran stat block, have mechanics as primal guardians, and they shift on a bonus action. It gives them non-magical, non-silvered resistance, temporary HP, wings, and a few other things. That's cool. Oh, and heads up, the art they've used for Vjorn is the same as Henrik from Curse of Strahd. I think they tend to reuse other official D&D art and stuff like this. Vjorn has his own unique stat block, I believe. It could be something that's been retwigged, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It looked unique to me. It has some spells and stuff. When I ran Falkovnia and included Vjorn, I think I used the Transmuter stat block from Volo's Guide to Monsters, Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, but I think this works better, and I would have used this, to be honest with you, instead. There's info about Vjorn's Primal Serum, which is good flavor if you include that in your game. And they finally find Radaga, hooray! It only took 3 modules. They can't talk to her privately straight away, but they do get an opportunity shortly afterwards. And they can tell her about Alanik trying to find her and say that they should leave Falkovnia with the PCs. But first, they have to help her prepare the serum, which is a 3-stage process. And then there's a group ability check to see how they do each time. But the skill is based on what they're doing to help. If they succeed, they have advantage on ability checks during the next stage, otherwise disadvantage. And if they fail 2 to 3 stages, Vjorn assumes they're trying to sabotage things, and his guards arrest them. And finally, there's mechanics for if a PC tries to use the serum on themselves, which is a risk of death. and although you gain a benefit that you can only use once during the entire adventure, there's a d6 table of symptoms and drawbacks, including fear of fire or other beast-like things. Chapter 3, The Siege. But instead of the siege being in Har'Akir, it's in Morfensi, where you currently are. If they're successful with the serum, they're given free run of the area and can help fortify it. But if they're unsuccessful, they're in a wooden cage, and they either have to get themselves out, or Har'Akir can let them out, or zombies may break the cages open to try and get to them. There's an encounter with some skeletons draped in boneless. It's 3 skeletons draped in 3 boneless. So it's essentially 6 enemies, but it looks like 3. I thought that was really cool, and I think I would use something like that in my game. There's also a d6 only bad decisions table. You can roll on a few times for flavor. For example, an archer fires a flaming arrow but accidentally hits a building and sets it on fire, stuff like that. But then, that's it. There's no other encounters. I wonder if content got cut. It's just description and flavor of how the rest of the siege goes. 8 hours pass and they have 5 levels of exhaustion. That's, at least going by 2014 rules, that's disadvantage and everything, max HP halved, and a speed of 0. Very, very tired pulling this zombie slaying all-nighter. But there are mechanics for being able to reduce this, and there's different ways to do it. And it gives an example that a sorcerer might use an inspiration point, expend a 2nd level spell slot, and use all their sorcery points. Now they only have 1 level exhaustion instead of 5. So they sacrifice some of their abilities and resources to reduce the extent of the exhaustion. Sensing Har'Akir and the PCs wanting to leave after this, Bjorn and some goons try and seize them. And there's a chase scene, and it explains how the chase can play out and what the PCs can do. There's a d20 chase complications table. The chase ends if they hide, get 120 feet away, or make it to the mist border, which is 1 mile away. PCs reduced to 0 hit points are left behind, return to Morfensi, stripped of their valuables, and impaled. That is grim, but very Falkovnia and very Ravenloft. And one last thing to mention in the handouts or appendix section is there are 4 Falkovnia countryside maps in the appendix, but they're quite small. They're 12 by 12 square grid, but they might be handy for your needs. RMH3, the Amber Dirge. This one takes place in Har'Akir, the desert domain. So the next assignment from Alnick is to investigate the White Oasis and its surroundings in search of clues. It says that PCs with the entertainer archaeologist backgrounds would do well here. The latter makes sense especially. Information about Alnick's home appears in this. That's handy if you're running Dementlieu beyond the first module I mentioned, which is the sort of dedicated Dementlieu one. Alnick uses mesmerism, which I think is a type of hypnotism on Har'Akir to glean info, which is how they get information for the White Oasis. So that's cool flavour for Alnick as an abilities. They find out about the White Oasis, the Amber Temple, and the Apparatus. Sends a different group of investigators to Barovia to seek out the Amber Temple, while the PCs are sent to Har'Akir's White Oasis. Before they go, Har'Akir gives them a magic item similar to a decanter of endless water, but is cursed. Har'Akir knows about the curse and tells them about it. There's 1 in 4 chance when it's used that bad things can happen instead. They arrive into the domain, there's flavour for terrain, weather, and so on. And they meet a musician named Poero. If they help him, he welcomes them to his village and offers them lodging. It says that if you want to expand the adventure, there's suggestions of 2 additions before the village. One involves an undead crocodile, so it's basically a crocodile with the zombie undead fortitude trait. And the other is ibises, which are basically reflavoured vultures that attack. There's a quarry next to the village, and there's info for various villager NPCs who all suffer from terminal illnesses or curses. The text says, everyone here has made the pilgrimage to White Oasis seeking to cleanse their souls in anticipation of meeting their end. And there's info for an inn and a temple, and info for 2 more NPCs, plus there's art of them, and I think at least one of them is in Tomb of Annihilation. Unbeknownst to the characters, a mysterious figure named Anotsupe emerges each night, and using his reed pipe lures residents of River Shelter to the nearby limestone quarry. There they are slain and raised as undead. The PCs look out the window at night. They see 4 strangely dressed people with elaborate amber headdresses walk into Poero's home. And if they investigate his home, the home is empty, and they find an amber shard next to his bed. And they find his harp, which is one of the instruments of the bard, so that's pretty cool. Chapter 2, you can question the visitors about Poero's disappearance. One person's identified a pattern with missing Piero, because Poero's not the first, and thinks another will go missing tonight. And if they wait it out, they see 7 sacred dead abduct a person that night. Sacred dead is, I believe, a custom stat block that appears in this module, and they are undead with battle axes and javelins. That's pretty cool. PCs will hopefully follow them to see what they're doing and where they go and why they're taking people. There's a sandstorm encounter, saving throws to work their way through and try not to have too much sand appear in their mouth, which can cause the poison condition. After the sandstorm, they find the undead are gone, but there's bits of amber from their headdresses and a finger and toe bone, things like that can act as a trail. Chapter 3, that led to a quarry. There's a map in the appendix, which I'm assuming is for this quarry, not the other one by the town. There's barrels, boxes, crates, and the possibility of encounters with scorpions, swarms of centipedes. And there's mining equipment, sarcophagi, traps. One of the traps is a rolling boulder, and the other is a cone of flame. And then they fight 4 of those sacred undead I mentioned earlier. And there's a complication that swirling sand can obscure the area or part of it. And then a Notsupe appears. And that's the cliffhanger. That's it for this adventure. Feels like a shorter adventure, but it is a 2-parter. RMH4, The Amber Secret. This is essentially Har'Akir Part 2. There's lots of info for the quarry, which I think is carried over from Part 1. Puero is a zombie now. Oh no, poor Puero. Plus there's a shadow, and there's a Notsupe, who's a conjurer stat block with some mods, including telepathy. Plus he can play a discordant tune, which is a dark power that was offered to him from an amber sarcophagus. There's an encounter flow section. I'm going to quote this. While a Notsupe's discordant tune is playing, each character must roll a d20 at the end of each round of combat. On a result of 16 to 20, nothing happens, but for any other result, one disturbingly quasi-humanoid shadow emerges from the sarcophagus of the same number and joins the fray. This may result in a large number of undead joining the battle. The characters need to silence the piper quickly. So hopefully it's a clue that, yeah, they need to take out the piper quickly. I've reread this so many times. It says that if they roll between a 1 and a 15 on a d20, now this is each character, that a shadow appears. But then it says the same number. Unless, hold on, let me look at the map. I wonder if there's 15 sarcophagi and it's like, they come from that one. So I wondered if it meant if you rolled a 15, then 15 shadows join. That would be nuts. That'd be way too many shadows, I imagine. I really don't know. There's no map included, and the map from the previous one only shows 3 sarcophagi, so I don't know. I don't know if it means that, so say 3 PCs roll a d20, get the lower result, so 3 shadows appear. That's probably the way I'd play it. But even if you do it that way, for every turn, if you have 4 PCs, there's a chance that there'll be 3 more shadows added to the battle, so that can really grow and grow for an adventure that's intended for level 4 characters. I can see that being really brutal. But the dark power named Murtu is unhappy with a Notsupe, so it suggests you have the undead turn on him if the battle gets a bit too intense. Maybe the PCs are losing. That's quite cool flavor as well, I think. And he has hobnail boots, which are like slippers for spider climbing, but there's a 1 in 6 chance they don't work when used because they're possessed by a mischievous soul. That's a bit cheesy, but I do like how it's got that sort of Ravenlofty bad element. And the zombie just wants his heart back. There's a thing explaining his goals that is so cute that a zombie has goals. And what happens if he isn't destroyed? And it says that if you're extending the adventure, you consider the zombie basically just harassing the players because it wants its heart back. And even if they get annoyed by him and kill him and reduce him to 0 hit points, he comes back, he like regenerates or whatever. It says, until he's rejoined with his harp, he can only painfully moan a single word. That's exactly how I would do it. No, it's not. Terrible. Once he's been granted his prize, he and it slowly crumble to dust as he plucks out one last mournful dirge. Oh, Poeramo, you break my heart, son. The next section is the tomb, which is called the Cradle. Info about it, apparently there's tools and scaffolding around. Are these zombie builders? And there's an antechamber and then the main chamber. You hear a voice in the main chamber, which is Murtu, the dark power. And there's 1 of 4 Maze of Murtu illusory challenges. You can choose on or roll on a d4 table, or you choose multiple if they do one and it's too easy or it's too easy or they do it too quickly. And you can use Malik's Decanter, that was the magic item they were given previously, to help them here. But the more they use it and rely on it, the more side effects it can cause, bad side effects. And it vibrates when they first enter this area, which is kind of like a nod and a wink-wink to the PCs that, maybe they should use this. The Silt Sea, the room fills with sand and there's mechanics for swimming and surviving in it, otherwise they suffocate. Shower of insects, it rains down insects, and you can choose either swarms of insects or swarm of rock grubs, DM's choice. Among the reeds, water floods the area 3 feet deep and reeds push up and there's 3 crocodiles. An encroaching stone, I think this might be my favourite. The room shrinks in size and a boulder rolls in. Anyone hit by it is knocked to 0 HP. And because it fills the area, it might be hard to heal them because if you're doing something like Healing Word, you might not be able to see them. So, but that's interesting. Any sort of spells to save somebody that you've got to see them. And there's information on, the AC and the hit points of the boulder if they want to try and destroy it before it hits them. Next, they find an amber door and there's markings on it and it's a puzzle. There's carving written in common that says, the way is true, the way is long. The way lies before you, should your mind prove strong. It looks like a small Sudoku puzzle. You've got to draw symbols in gaps, but if they get one wrong, it resets, they take 1 necrotic damage, and that increases by 1 every time they make a mistake. It says it might be tricky for the people to figure out, especially if they're not familiar with Sudoku. So there's mechanics for helping the players, like they can roll an investigation check, or if someone has the sage background, it can help them. Otherwise, the door has an AC and HP, so they can knock it down with brute force. The inner tomb is mostly plain, except for a large sarcophagus carved from amber. The voice, Murtu, speaks to them telepathically, promising them power. The vestige of Murtu can delve into a PC's mind to learn what it can offer in order to gain their trust. That's pretty cool. Via their bond and floor info. So if you've got a PC who's looking for a missing relative, maybe they say, this gift will help you find your relative or something like that. And there's info about how Alanic Grey reacts to them, whether or not they take the dark gift, or do. And it's quite funny, because if they don't take the dark gift, Murtu just basically shrugs and is basically like, fine, I'll offer it to someone else. And even Alanic says, you should have taken it, because now some poor innocent person might take it. So you basically get like chastised for not doing the evil thing. I love it. And the dark gift is called Deceitful Heart. There's quite a few dark gifts through these. Some of them are quite, I don't want to say weak sauce. They are intended for low levels though. I mean, Amber Temple in Curse of Strahd, where people can get hold of dark gifts, is intended for like level 8, 9, 10 onwards. And this is like level 4, so if you had one of those gifts, it'd probably be too overpowered. Deceitful Heart, you gain proficiency in Deception and Persuasion, and your proficiency bonus is doubled for those. You learn the Minor Illusion cantrip, and the drawback is you gain disadvantage on insight checks and saving throws against illusion spells and illusionary effects. Number 5, RMH 5, Unexpected Hospitality. This is the first of the 2 Barovia ones, so I might spend a little bit more time on these. Alanic has sent a team to Barovia, but they've all gone quiet. So you're sent to see what's going on. It takes place in Kresk and then rural Barovia, and then it ends outside the entrance to the Amber Temple. It gives info saying what Barovian PCs would know, plus if you have any PCs with either the Haunted One or Acolyte backgrounds, they get advantage on Christmas checks when interacting with Barovians. Starts off in Alanic's office in Dementlieu, where Radega gives the PCs a spear referred to as the Blood Drinker's Backbone. It's also called the Nosferatu's Backbone, and it's a spear that's made from an actual vampire's backbone. I like this. It's a +3 spear, but if you miss an attack with it, you take necrotic damage equal to the damage you would have dealt, and you gain 1 level of exhaustion. So it's almost like a last resort, need to do big damage kind of weapon. She also gives them spell scrolls of Raised Dead and Greater Restoration. They arrive into Kresk, and this shows the wrong map in the appendix section. I think it's supposed to include a map of Kresk, because it references areas of Kresk like it does in Curse of Strahd, where it's like S1 and S2. But there's no Kresk map. It just shows a map of Barovia, so I wonder if they're meant to show the Kresk map instead, or we're meant to show both. There's also a town square and some stall owners. The art for one of them is Milavoj from Curse of Strahd reused, so just a heads up there. Although interesting, apparently he's an angel from the upper planes in disguise. I don't know if this is a nod to the abbot in Curse of Strahd, perhaps it is. There's no inn in Kresk, and most Kreskites won't let people stay with them unless they do them a favour, such as entertain someone's kids, help someone repair their roof, and there's a few more. If they don't find somewhere to stay, they gain 1 level of exhaustion because they just have a really uncomfortable night's sleep outside. There's a D6 table, the Kresk Rumour Mill, where people might learn stuff about what happened to the other investigators. And they can also meet the Burgomaster, Dmitry Kreskov, and they've used the art for Erwin Martikov from Curse of Strahd, even though there's actually art of Dmitry Kreskov available. And there's also a discrepancy with the name of the spelling. I think they misspell or spell Dmitry differently to how it appears in Curse of Strahd. And it says that he's suspicious of them, they could be werewolves, but they're nice to him and they're good to other Kreskites. He can give them a silvered mace as a present. Then they leave Kresk, and as they travel the Svarlich Road, some people appear who are actually werewolves, led by a Loup Guru. They want to rob the PCs, not kill them, and they want them to throw their silvered mace in the lake. If the PCs refuse, there's a very tense standoff, and if they transform and attack, there's a wisdom save or the PCs are frightened. It says it's a difficult encounter, but the Loup Guru doesn't have his legendary actions and does fewer attacks, so they've nerfed it a little. And then a cool thing happens when more than half of the PCs are downed. A mist rolls in. The werewolves start shouting an alarm and then whimper and whine in their silence. And when the mist clears, all the werewolves are dead. And who's responsible? A single man, very well-dressed noble who says, "Welcome to Barovia," and introduces himself as Strahd. If they retrieve the silvered mace from the lake, they might also find, if they did throw it in there, they might also find a Moon Touch longsword as well, so another magic item. Then at the werewolves' camp, they find evidence of the previous investigators. They find the remains of 2 of them nearby. It's pretty grisly. And then lastly, Strahd offers them hospitality. Do they accept? If they do, Strahd gives them use of his black carriage and travels with them. And the descriptions of travel sound weird. On the way from Kresk to the Amber Temple, they pass Vallaki, Lake Zarevich, and Castle Ravenloft. I mean, if you look at the Barovia map, that's like completely the wrong way. The box text says they pass through Vallaki, which I find hilarious because the whole thing Curse of Strahd about Vallaki, and Strahd hasn't been here for centuries, and the absolute sheer panic and terror of Strahd just showed up one day and he just rolls in with his carriage as if nothing's happened. And then there's box text for Lake Zarevich and Castle Ravenloft. It must take a weird route because it makes it out like Zarevich is east of Vallaki instead of north. And Castle Ravenloft, it says, is only 30 minutes after the lake. So, not sure what's going on there. I feel like the writers just wanted to hint at other parts of Barovia, but kind of didn't consult the map, even though the map is included. And then it says mists surround them, and Strahd says, enjoy the ride. Presumably they are transported to the Amber Temple. They also get the benefits of a long rest if they accept the food and drink that Strahd offers. And if they decline Strahd's hospitality, going all the way back to the whole, do they get in the carriage, yes or no? Strahd just storms off, and they have to walk. There's mechanics for staving off exhaustion, it takes 6 hours, and there's a small D8 random encounter table, which includes things like phantom warriors, a tree blight, a giant skeleton, wraiths, and some lycanthropes. Interestingly, some of the lycanthropes are 4 were-ravens, which is not choice, I feel, because they're good lycanthropes, and it's making it out as if it's like, let's just include this monster and attack. It could be a mistake from the writers, because it kind of goes against the lore of Curse of Strahd, or maybe the were-ravens saw the PCs with Strahd and think they're allies of Strahd, perhaps, maybe flavour it that way. There's also a stat block included for a greater zombie, which I don't think appears in the adventure, so I wonder if that's one they were going to add to the table, scrapped, but then forgot to remove the stat block. And lastly for this video, RMH6, Amber Reclamation. This takes place entirely in the Amber Temple. There's a box that explains that the adventure plays separately from and isn't designed to be played in conjunction with the story provided in Curse of Strahd. As such, it intentionally reuses and removes much of the content found in that adventure. However, if you wish to extend the play experience of this adventure, you can use other areas of the Amber Temple as they are presented in Curse of Strahd, complete with room descriptions, monster encounters, traps, etc. So they arrive into the upper part of the temple, and it borrows a lot of descriptions from the Amber Temple from Curse of Strahd, albeit abridged. Pretty much the whole top floor on the west side, and then parts of the bottom floor as well. This is interesting. The Arcanaloth and one of the Flame Skulls are already dead. They were killed by Shaleth, who's the ranger, the lone survivor of that investigator group from the other group, the group that went to Barovia first of all. There's 2 Flame Skulls left out of the 3, and they have names! Farnan and Gilderoy. How cute is that? It tells you a bit about their pasts, their pre-Flame Skull lives as wizards, and what they were like as wizards doing their stuff in the Amber Temple. It says they're curious about visitors but not aggressive, and they may prove useful if the characters coax them out of hiding. So they are nervous because, hey, this ranger came in and tried to kill them and killed 2 of their friends, but they do want revenge on the ranger as well, so the PCs might be able to like convince them to join them or something like that. There's no berserkers in X15 anymore. That's the room in the sort of southwest. The 3 Flame Skulls in the corridor on the west side, obviously they've been relocated. One is dead, the other 2 are those 2 named buddies. The corpse is still there, but doesn't have the staff. There's no spectres in X22, that's that dining room in the northwest. And X26 was the room where when you open the door, hundreds of skulls come out. There's no skulls, and the chest on the ceiling is still there, but it's already open and the floor is missing, so it's made it out as if somebody already opened that chest and the floor disappears when that happens. And the next section is about the Lich's Lair and Exithanta, who's got unique new art in this. So if you want art for Exithanta, you can get it from here. He's seen the ranger, thinks there's more to him than meets the eye, and says he's looking for something, and says that the half-elf ranger recognized him and knew his name. And they can restore his memory properly if they still have the Scroll of Greater Restoration that Radika gave them previously. And it's similar to the info in Curse of Strahd, he knows the door passwords and stuff like that. Now they might have used it to stave off werewolf lycanthropy in that werewolf battle otherwise. If they're nice to him, he tells them how the amber sarcophagi work, and that's if they restore his memory as well. But if they detect his phylactery, he gets angry. And in the next section is about the lower temple, and this is where they eventually encounter Shaleth, the half-elf ranger. There's some box text for him. And there's a thing about the lower floor, there's deviations box text where they've replaced some of the areas to that of Curse of Strahd, and unless specified, the areas are unoccupied, no monsters. So they remove some of the monsters from the floor. Door info has changed as well. So in Curse of Strahd, if you destroy one of those doors, there's a big necrotic blast, and if you reduce to 0 HP, you die instantly, turning into dust and bones. This time, if somebody breaks down a door without, or if someone enters the room without using a password, there's a Griff of Warding that triggers. This is intended for level 5 PCs, so it does make sense to reduce the damage. X33A, that was the vestige room with 3 flame skulls. It gives adjustment info depending on how big the party is. If it's a big party, add more flame skulls. The west sarcophagus is unresponsive and the east one has no info at all, but the south one is still zrin-hala, the Howling Storm, but the dark gift is changed. Originally in Curse of Strahd, it's lightning bolt 3 times, and the downside is you have a sagging face. Now it's that you become very angry and vengeful. You learn Shocking Grasp, the cantrip. You can use your reaction to counterattack someone with a weapon you're holding, and you can do that once per short or long rest. And if you roll on that one, there's a D4 negative effect table. It's things like turn blind for a turn, disadvantage on attack rolls with your weapon until the end of your next turn, stuff like that. X33B, this is the one that had Mind Blank, the Skeletal Wings, and Suggestion Gifts. But in Ravenloft Mist Hunters, they're unresponsive. It is a bit disappointing that some of these are unresponsive and, therefore not applicable. But I get it. It's complicated if you have like 18 or however many there are in the original Curse of Strahd up for grabs. There is, however, a spell scroll of Healing Word in this. X33C is blocked entirely and can't be accessed. That was the one with the climbing ghasts in Curse of Strahd. X33D, the one with the Nothics. That sounds like a Friends episode title. Chandler and Nothic saying, "Can these vestiges be any more evil?" The Nothics are still there and aren't aggressive immediately. I think that's similar to Curse of Strahd. It only has info for the West Sarcophagus, Delbin, the Star of Ice and Hate. That was the one that originally gave use of Cone of Cold 7 times, a Ring of Warmth effect, but you're terrified of fire. This time it's the Frostbite cantrip. You're resistant to cold damage, but if you roll a natural 1, your lips become numb and you have disadvantage until the end of your next turn. X33E, this is the one with the Death Slard in it. There's no more Death Slard. No info for any of the vestiges, so assuming they're all unresponsive. X33F, no mention of the South and East sarcophagi, one of which was the Hellhound's Gift one. That was probably my favourite from Curse of Strahd. But the west one is Norganus, the Finger of Oblivion, but reworked again. Instead of Finger of Death 3 times, you drop to 0 hit points on the 3rd use, and your blood is like black tar. You are resistant to necrotic damage. Now, I'll argue that's really valuable in a Ravenloft campaign. You learn Speak with Egg as well. I'd say that's also really valuable. And if you roll a 1 on the death save, you die immediately. And at first I thought, whoa, that's really bad. But if you roll a natural 1 on the death save normally, you get 2 out of 3 failed death saves. So, depends on how long you're on death saves for, but this just really means you don't want to be on death saves and increases the chance a bit more of instant death while on death saves. There's other rooms. It still has the Shield Guardian, but it's inactive, and the Control Amulet is missing, whereas in Curse of Strahd it's in Vilnius's possession, but Vilnius isn't in this. X38 still has the Poltergeist, and X39 doesn't have the 4 Poltergeists it had in it. There is no mention of X40, that's the Sealed Treasury. It's not in this adventure, but you could always use Curse of Strahd's info. I've just realised as well, the main vault room, the one that has vampire in it, isn't in this either. And the final section is the Ranger running away from the PCs, and it's another chase scene. You can cast Misty Step 3 times, plus there's a D20 chase complications table. 50% of the time, Shaleth is slightly slower, he loses like 5 feet movement. Otherwise, it's things like the ceiling collapses in an area, there's a weakened rogue of smothering gets in the way, or a skeleton gets in the way, stuff like that. Chase ends if he's 120 feet away, they catch him, or if they kill him. And if he gets outside, he hides, but struggles to do so. It's pretty open. That's them saying that, by the way, not me. During the chase, he drops a gem. It's called Crystallized Fire. It's basically like a gem of seeing, but it's hot to the touch, and whenever it's used, roll a d20, and if you get a 1, it bursts into flame, doing fire damage. Well, dex save, or fire damage. Whether he's captured, rescued, killed, or he gets away, they find his journal, which talks about amber vestiges. And it talks about an urn of dreams, and a scion of darkness. I'm pretty sure that's the next 4 modules cover those 2 things. They go back to Kresk, Cabe finds them, and off they go out of Barovia. And that's it. Whew, that was a ride, wasn't it? Part 2 I'll do soon. I may not be on my next Ravenloft video. This took months to get ready, by the way. I've been working on this video a long time in the background. Hopefully the second version, part 2, won't take that long. I have got a video in mind in between, so it might be that this is about, a few weeks or a month away, is part 2. And part 2 will cover Ikath, Valachan, Mordant, and Darkon. And possibly other domains as well, but I'm pretty sure it's those 4. That's it for this one. The other Ravenloft video I want to do soon is I've nearly finished watching all of the old Black Dice Society videos. This was the official Ravenloft actual play, which started around the time Van Richten's guide came out, and they spent about 2 years playing a weekly live game where they listed loads of different domains of dread. And I'll talk, I guess similar to this, it's not to review it, it's to give flavor of, if you're thinking of watching it, I'll say, all right, it covers this domain and this domain and this domain. And I think it covers most of the Mist Wanderer NPCs as well from Van Richten's guide, stuff like that. And if you haven't heard the news, I recently started a membership. It's very similar to Patreon. It's like YouTube's own version. The lowest tier is just like $1 a month. And it's just, you get access to a badge that shows how long you've been a member and emoji, things like that. And then the next tier up is member first videos. You get access to videos maybe a day or two early. I mean, not all videos, but some of them. Member only videos, that's usually behind the scenes stuff. Like my first one was the plans for 2026 or like future videos basically. And I did one talking about my most and least popular videos to date based on dislikes. You can also get discounts on my DMs Guild resources. I've got 3, one of which is sort of if you want to start a Ravenloft campaign. I've got a 4th. I had an idea for a 4th yesterday as well, so we'll see how that goes. There might be more tiers in the future as well, where I maybe give some like consulting or help with your Ravenloft Curse of Strahd campaigns, like one-on-one help, that kind of thing. And we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.